Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth show of today's Smart Insights Annual Digital Trends Summit. My name's Charlie Townsend, and I'm the Digital Marketing Manager here at Smart Insights, and I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out to join us for today's webinar. For anyone who's joined us at previous summits or our previous sessions earlier today, welcome back. And for anybody new to the summit, we'd like to wish you a warm welcome and hope you get a lot from the rest of today. First up, just a quick word about who we are. At Smart Insights, our mission is simple: to provide marketers of all levels with the skills and knowledge you need to experience growth and learning in your careers and in your business. We provide marketing solutions for channel specialists, growth strategists, and business owners and CEOs. We also have a free digital marketing planning template and other introductory resources for free members. All this is available on our website, so I highly recommend you check us out after this session. So earlier today, our last session, we heard from Matt Sarson, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Vista Analytics, and he covered marketing and digital wellbeing and is there too much technology? I highly recommend you catch up on demand if you missed out on that session. But for now, I'd like to welcome Jack Richards, who is the Marketing Manager of Talkwalker. Jack, it's great to have you with us here today. We're really looking forward to your session. Just before I hand over to Jack, just to let you know, you can send any questions you may have in the comment box on the screen throughout the session. You should see that come up towards the top, question mark. And then Jack will try his best to cover as many of these towards the end of the session as possible. If he doesn't get to all your questions, Jack and his team will respond to you directly on email after this session. You can also download the slides that we're about to go through from the attachments tab. You might find other useful links that Jack and myself have put to support this webinar. But for now, that's enough from me. So I'm going to hand over to Jack. Enjoy the show.
Wow, a show. I'm not sure I'd describe it as a show, but good to be here, everybody. I'm thrilled to welcome you to Talkwalker's contribution to what's been a fantastic day so far. I'm really conscious that some of these things can become sort of death by PowerPoint, death by webinar. And some of you will have a bit of webinar fatigue. So I'm going to try and keep this short yet informative and hopefully somewhat exciting. Maybe not a show, but exciting perhaps. What we're going to be doing today is be exploring the UK's most loved brands, understanding how to become a loved brand, why it's important, and how data-driven marketers can drive strategy to help their brand become more loved. So I'll be your host for today. My name is Jack Richards. I'm the marketing manager for Northern Europe here at Talkwalker. I've worked in the insight space for a few years now. I'm a chartered manager, a member of the PRCA, associate of the CIM, and I've previously headed up global marketing for a more traditional media analysis organization. So this idea of data intelligence, understanding the consumer landscape, very close to my heart, and hopefully something I can provide some sort of insight on. So today we'll, of course, be revealing the UK's most loved brands. That's something that everyone seems to get excited about when I do these sessions. But we'll also be digging into how they got there, why it matters, and how we came to those conclusions. I'll try and equip you with some case studies to help bring the idea of brand love to life as best I can. And as Charlie said, we'll leave some time for questions at the end. So let's get cracking. I think an important backdrop to everything we'll be talking about today is to consider the rapidly evolving consumer landscape, particularly post-COVID. Everything has changed. Everything you thought you knew about your consumers has changed. Who they are, where they hang out, their media consumption habits, their spending habits, the issues that matter most to them, the broader socio-political landscape. There's a war in Ukraine. We're lacking leadership, both literally and figuratively at the moment. A whole lot has changed in recent years. And that's why, as marketers, as comms practitioners, it's no longer good enough to conduct one-off pieces of research. Your February 2020 focus group, out of date. Client survey, not holistic enough. Biannual pulse survey, not regular enough. To truly understand your audience, my view is that to truly do that, to truly close the consumer closeness gap, you've got to have your finger on the pulse with up-to-the-minute data, with actionable insights, and by getting close to the real conversations that your consumers are having. You've got to understand your audience, and you've got to become customer-centric. So I think as a backdrop to that, most companies still look at brand love through a very limited lens. They try to measure brand equity, but they don't go beyond traditional methods. They count stuff, and if you only count metrics, you'll only end up doing stuff. It reduces marketers and decision makers' ability, and it shifts from strategic thinking to tactical work. I always say if you just count stuff, you just do stuff, and you end in a perpetual cycle. They also tend to think in terms of outputs, how many press releases, ads, social media campaigns, emails they've sent, and not outtakes, what people now think and feel about your brand as a result, or outcomes, sales, share price, and the like. And they use whatever they're doing because of that output quantitative focus. They use that as a tick box exercise. They then don't use the data in a meaningful way that helps them drive and measure that change. And frankly, as a data-driven marketer, that is depressing, but it's entirely understandable because measuring the stuff that matters is hard. But this means that vendors like Talkwalker need to step up and support marketeers, comms practitioners, and the like. My personal view is that many marketing generalists didn't get into marketing to analyze campaigns. They got into marketing to do campaigns. Comms practitioners don't want to spend their time deriving PR value. They want to drive PR value. They want to work in a strategic way that achieves continuous, customer-centric focused campaigns. And that's where the opportunity for change really sits in my view. And we know that this idea of customer centricity that I've touched on drives organizational outcomes. But it's very difficult for many to pin down, right, what does that mean? What is customer centricity? For me, it's about building a connection with an audience. We often, in today's age, talk about this idea of authenticity, being values driven and building trust as a result. It means knowing your customers inside out, not just their needs, their wants, their desires, but their feelings. And I think this is something we'll come back on. That idea of not just what people think, but what they feel, and how your marketing can drive an emotional response. And then using those insights to create a brand that speaks to them on a deeper level, a human level, particularly post-COVID. And I think the best way of doing that is by starting with the customer at the heart of your strategy, building an emotional connection from there, from that very first touch. And I really want to touch on this idea that brand love, which is achieved largely through customer centricity, is more than just a vanity exercise. I'm very conscious that explaining to colleagues or walking into the boardroom or the C-suite and saying, hey, our brand is a love brand, it doesn't in itself achieve very much. That's absolutely true. So it's important that we triangulate outputs, your marketing comms activity, with outtakes, what people now think or feel as a result, such as whether they love your brand, and business outcomes, sales, share price, repeat custom, etc. We know that being a love brand, therefore, isn't just a vanity exercise. I think there might have been a bit of a glitch on my slides there. It's not you being tired at the end of the day. I think there's a couple of glitches there. So one of the most important metrics there, well, there's a few. 86% of customers spend more on the brands they love. We see a threefold growth in levels of advocacy, and 75% of consumers change their buying habits for the brands they love. That's incredibly powerful. We know, therefore, that being a love brand is important because it's reflective of the bigger picture. It's reflective of activity that drives organizational outcomes. So we know that brands people love put consumers at the center of everything. We know that brand love comes back to this idea of customer centricity. So I thought yesterday, just to leave things nice and fine, I would have a look at a couple of examples of brands that do this well. And there are a couple that sprang to mind. Starbucks is one example. They recognize, in my view, that for the vast majority of their customers, particularly in the States, those customers are time poor and they therefore value speed. They build on this customer need. Starbucks has adapted their operations and their marketing strategy accordingly to better balance and promote efficiency, effectiveness, and this idea of continuous improvement. But what's really interesting at the same time is that doesn't mean they reduce their offering in the same way that some value supermarket chains might to promote speed. They still offer all of the, skinny oat mocha decaf latte cooler, variations that their customers have grown to love over the years. And that's because they've identified a need, but they've stayed true to their brand offering. And I think that's a really good example of customer centricity. Another example I've got here is Patagonia. And that's a brand that's always been driven by the environment. But I think it's fair to say that many of us will have noticed them starting to put the environment first in much of their marketing very recently. That's obviously likely in part due to young adults being interested more and more in sustainability topics now more than ever. And something I like about Patagonia is that environmental approach. They've openly acknowledged that earning trust is difficult. We all know that, and particularly so amongst younger, values-driven consumers. And they understand, therefore, that authenticity is key, that idea that we touched on already. Instead of broadcasting sustainability content, they put transparency on top. They provide information on their production processes. They actively engage with consumer questions on social. They don't just believe in their mission statement. I believe their mission statement is we're in business to save our planet or something along those lines. They don't just believe in it, they live it. Their marketing, their strategy, and their marketing and comms colleagues reflect that brand value and that brand vision. So hopefully those examples are interesting and give you a very quick top line of why customer centricity is important. And I think it leads nicely into our brand love methodology. Our recent report with our brand love sort of proprietary benchmarking methodology, it doesn't just rely on one data point, such as sentiment, for instance. What we've done instead is we've triangulated the data to give brands, to give organization a fuller picture, a better understanding of what they need to do to become a loved brand, and narrowing down focus on the things that really matter. So in our methodology, we said that brand love can be measured by looking at three things. A passion score, and the way Talkwalker has derived that is by doing keyword analysis, emoji analysis, image analysis, to not just see the written mentions of your brands, but actually the logo, where it's appearing, and the broader context. A customer satisfaction score, which brings in third-party review data, as well as identifying sentiment from those which our AI has identified as your customers on social. And thirdly, a trust score. So using keyword, emoji, image analysis, and weighting those results to determine an element of trust. And that's what we did, using our own platform to determine the world's and the UK's most loved brands. We started with 1,500 brands across 20 industries in 8 markets, analysing 2.6 billion conversations, and we ended up with our top 10. So here they are. What I'm not going to do is sort of do this, in number 10 is, this in number 9, in number 8, as if it's some sort of weird UK top 40 radio show. I'll leave you to look at it for a few seconds while it's on the screen. I think it's fair to say that it's a relatively surprising list. A lot of these brands have an element of softness, an element of comfort. They're relatable brands. And I guess that's likely a symptom of the emergence from COVID and the timing of the report. But while some of these brands look very different, I wouldn't necessarily put Hasbro in the same bucket as Lush or Lego with Land Rover. And some of them are a surprise generally. I believe that many of them have got a common thread, and when I look at them, I can absolutely understand how that methodology is fed into this leaderboard. And these rankings, as I say, are a symptom of that methodology we've just touched on. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to go through all 10 because I think that would be really quite boring. Instead, I want to get really excited about 3 and put on a show, as Charlie said, for 3 of them. So the first one here is Lego. Now, I'm not a parent, but I understand that when it comes to your little princess, your little prince, only the best is good enough. And it shows. So Lego not only topped the UK list, it also featured in Italy, Germany, Australia, Switzerland, all of their lists. And each of them have their cultural and social nuances. But in my view, there's a common thread of what makes Lego a loved brand. Lego's known for its collaborations and its partnerships with other brands, especially in the entertainment world. And you'll see the likes of Star Wars, Harry Potter, Assassin's Creed, etc. This year they teamed up with McLaren to build a replica of their Formula One car. McLaren then tweeted the collaboration that generated 36,000 engagements. It became the 3rd most engaged post among all Lego mentions in the UK. And that's bringing in a diversity of audience, a merging of audience, and creating this element of 2 worlds colliding, which adds a sort of element of additional love, if you like. So that sort of brand collaboration is massive for Lego, and something I believe we're going to start to see more of from other brands as well. Brands love Lego, but customers love them more, kids as well as adults. So you'll see on the left there, in that left-hand photo, this is a post from what I'm reliably told is an AFOL, an adult fan of Lego, who bought Lego flowers for his wife. That earned about 36,500 engagements on Twitter. In fact, hashtag AFOL is one of the most prominent hashtags when it comes to Lego. And I think that really comes back to the point of understanding your audience. It's very easy to make assumptions. I imagine if we sat around a room and as a brand team and spoke about Lego, we would talk about children, we would talk maybe about teenagers. I think if you go back sort of 10, 20 years, you'd maybe talk about boys. But this is no longer the case. And if they were to focus solely on children, they'd be neglecting a huge part of their potential audience. I think the other point really is, when it comes back to remembering your audience, is that when it comes to Lego, your audience is often not the end consumer. You've also got, whilst the child may well be using Lego most of the time, it's often a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, family friend, whatever, who needs to go through that marketing funnel, so to speak, and make the decision that this would be great for little Jimmy or Jane's birthday or whatnot. And how we align that messaging is clearly very different to what we'd be delivering to Jimmy or Jane themselves. And I think what's interesting about that, if you analyze some of the campaigns that Lego do, where the individual making the purchasing decision is often a parent, these are the people that Lego do well at communicating with, connecting with, often through building a sense of nostalgia, a sense of community. With that, I guess, comes an undertone of trust and a general sort of passion around the brand. And I think that's something that Lego do really well, understanding their audience and tailoring the message accordingly. The next feature in our top 10 was Nando's. And we all love a cheeky Nando's. We all know that phrase. And I think there are a couple of things here within our analysis that really piqued my interest. So yeah, there are a couple of points here. A-level students and GCSE students, in fact, were rewarded for their hard work on results day, not only fingers crossed by their successes, but with free food. And 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, if there's one thing they can all agree on, it's that free food is a good thing. So what Nando's did was they offered students complimentary meals, and that gesture was clearly very, very well received on social media, as you can see on the screen there. The most prominent themes around the restaurant chain, Nando's, was free food, free chicken, and that helped push brand sentiment to 25% positive. What's great about that is they know who their audience is, they recognize the moments that matter, and they become part of them. So I imagine that these exam leavers are going to remember their results day for the rest of their lives, hopefully for good reasons. And with that, they'll remember Nando's too. And if we go back to that point of Lego and their nostalgic element to their marketing, I imagine that this is something that Nando's are going to be able to leverage very well in the future. And I think that's an example of Nando's being a great people-first, customer-centric brand, as we touched on. It understands its audience and it connects to it. And it also connects to it through popular culture. One way it connects to us through popular culture is through music. Anyone who's not seen that video of Ed Sheeran, an example there, singing about chicken in a car park, I recommend it. Download the slides at the end and you'll be able to watch that. But it also does it through video, and I'll come back to that, but also through social. They have a fantastic brand advocacy black card scheme. And yes, Ed Sheeran is one of those black card members, and so is Example, but also David Beckham, Greg James, Pixie Lott, accessing a fairly broad sort of subset of the population who we wouldn't necessarily associate with Nando's. And again, that's a good sort of demonstration of Nando's thinking about their audience, thinking of who they want to access and how they're going to get there through a good, well thought out influencer campaign. We also saw a lot of brand love for TikTok shared on, for Nando's rather, shared on TikTok. That is a common phenomenon that we've seen on social more broadly and with lots of other brands. Common phenomenon, that's a difficult one, isn't it, for a webinar? And I think what's interesting about that is Nando's, again, really speaks to that Gen Z population. And TikTok is the perfect place for that. Spending your way to brand love, ads, discounts, whatever else, it doesn't work in the same way anymore. Authenticity, customer centricity, creating meaningful connections in the places where your audience genuinely hang out, where it's genuinely happening, is what works. Our partners at Hootsuite, who we co-created this report with, have shared a couple of bits of info with me on this. TikTok users are almost 2.5 times more likely than other platform users to create a post and tag a brand after buying a product, and more than double as likely to comment or DM a brand after making a purchase. That is incredibly powerful sort of social-driven marketing, community-based marketing that's putting your audience at the forefront of what you're doing and helping them drive your marketing for you. And again, it comes back to getting close to the data, understanding your audience, and empowering your marketing to drive what matters. My third and final example is L'Oreal, and we've heard that phrase before, because you're worth it, and you all are. Thanks for joining. But what they do is they recognize or believe that this idea of beauty is about more than looking good, but feeling good too. They I think it's fair to say they embody that in the way they advertise. People are the main focus of almost 95% of their Twitter posts, according to Talkwalker. And that is hugely powerful. That in itself says an awful lot. And sort of dovetailing off from that, L'Oreal has a very successful range of ambassadors, from Kate Winslet to Helen Mirren and many others in between. Those are both examples, I think, of women who are deemed to be both, relatable, but also aspirational. Women who sort of ooze feeling good and confidence. And I think that idea of people over product, it builds trust. That's obviously a crucial element of the Talkwalker brand love benchmarking methodology. But of course, that's got to be authentic. It's important to ensure that those ambassadors and brand influencers truly reflect your brand and its message. You'll see there, Helen Mirren makes L'Oreal skin crawl with admission moisturizer probably doesn't do a lot. And I was chatting to Hootsuite's marketing director about this on a previous webinar, and my initial thought was, that's not great. That's a really that's an example of brand love gone wrong, of influencer strategy gone wrong, and she made me think differently, actually. And her argument was that, the undertone of what Helen Mirren is saying here is, do you know what? It probably doesn't do an awful lot, but I don't care. It makes me feel good, and that's all that matters. When I put on a bit of moisturizer or whatever, I feel better about myself. I have confidence. I feel like I'm worth it. And in fact, that aligns far more with an audience and invoking emotion than talking about the science behind a product or whatever else. And I think that was a really interesting thought from our colleagues at Hootsuite. And I think that idea of brand love and driving that through influencers, there are some really good examples of that. I often get asked, how I'm a small brand. Brand love doesn't matter to me. To that, I always say, if you have customers and want more customers, brand love is important, and you can measure it and you can use it as a benchmark. There are a couple of good examples. The first is Donut Time, who really sort of kicked off during lockdown in 2020. Difficult time for business. But what they did is they sort of understood their audience. They understood that their audience is sort of young or teenage girls and women. And they employed their staff who drove the TikTok incredibly authentically, doing TikTok dances, promoting the products alongside it, and creating an element of fun, which their audience could clearly associate themselves with, rather than heading on to Adobe and creating a pretty poster and putting it on Facebook. They understood that TikTok is where these people are hanging out, and these are the messages and tactics that will resonate with them. And I think that was a fantastic example. The other example is M&S, but not M&S as a corporate account. I want to talk specifically about M&S Brentwood. What they have done, M&S has allowed their stores to create their own TikTok accounts. They recognize that this people-first, people-centric, consumer-centric approach is what wins. And as a result, they've let their store at Brentwood really drive the strategy forward on this. They create their own songs, their own dances, particularly around new product releases, particularly around Percy the pig and Colin the caterpillar and that sort of stuff. And you've got the women who work on the tills, you've got the guys who stack the shelves and vice versa, all coming together. The people you see in the store who become mini celebrities, we love them, and and in relation to that, we love the brand, we love M&S as a result, and people travel some way to go and see these people featuring in their videos, because again, they're people first, they're consumer centric, they've understood what their consumers want to see, and they target their marketing activity accordingly. And I think that's really a good example. I think that idea of authenticity is really key. So as we come to the end, I promised I'd keep this fairly short. I wanted to leave you with some tips on how to create love for your brand. We've worked in partnership with Hootsuite on these. So I think the first is a real baseline for any marketer in any organization. I've seen very large businesses not understanding this properly. I've seen very small businesses trying to tackle this. Choose the best social channel for your objectives. And with that, I would always say start with the objective first. Start with the objective in mind before you do anything. As we say, if you just do stuff, you just count stuff and you end up in a perpetual cycle. So choose the best social channel for your objectives and therefore better understand your audience in doing so. The next is don't count B2B out. There are some fantastic B2B brands, even on TikTok, for example, who are building brand awareness, especially through sort of consumer first, non-product led campaigns. The third is all about trust. And I think what I would say to that is let go of your brand a bit. Get rid of that sort of commercial brand guardian nonsense and just go for it. The campaigns that go wrong, the ones that don't get any traction, no one remembers them because they didn't get any traction. Be okay with failing, be okay with learning what works, and start by going after your objectives and trying the things that may well deliver the stuff that matters. The fourth is thinking about social as more than a marketing tool. I think particularly think of social as more than a broadcasting tool. Join the conversations that your consumers are having. Drive your content based on the topics that they're talking about. Join the hashtags that they are using. The next is, you'll be surprised to hear about customer centricity. Find the ways to get closer to your consumers. And I think that largely links back to that last point. Use a consumer intelligence platform like Talkwalker to understand who your consumers are, where they're hanging out, what are the issues that matter to them, where do they need help, how have their lives changed, what are your competitors doing, who are those people who influence them, and pivot your marketing strategy. You don't need to keep doing the things that you've always done. Try new things and see what works. And the final thing is to keep monitoring. Use conversation intelligence, monitor customer satisfaction, understand sentiment, and you'll be on a very good track to understanding brand love and to really nailing those areas that you need to focus on. So that's pretty much it from me. I've put on the screen a QR code to download our report, which you'll see here. I think there's nothing worse than someone putting on a massive URL or a bit.ly link or whatever. So feel free to get out your phone, get up the camera and scan that code to download the report. We've gathered insight from the world's 50 most loved brands from different industries, highlighted how those brands have managed to get that ranking, and therefore provided you with some cheeky tips as to how you could do the same. And feel free to tweet as well using the hashtag #BrandLove on what you thought of today and if we can help you with anything at all. Well, that's been an absolute joy. Lovely to speak to you all. And if you've got any questions at all, I'd be delighted to hear them if you just want to pop them in the question box. I think we might have had one or two already.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Jack. That was a really engaging session. Some great tips on how we can become a loved brand in all our areas. So like Jack said, add any questions in the box and he can answer those now. We've had a couple come through so far. So yeah, I'll start asking those over to you now, Jack. So the first question is, what advice would you give to brands looking to start their own brand love initiatives?
To talk to Talkwalker. No, I think start with your objectives in mind. It's interesting. I've spoken a lot about brand love. I see brand love as more of a consequence of doing things well than an objective in itself. Um, so do things that will move the needle on those three metrics we are looking at. Things that will drive sentiment, things that will build trust, and things that will improve customer satisfaction. And you don't necessarily, if you're a smaller business, need a tool to do that, although you'd certainly need a tool to measure it. So if you want to improve brand love, break it down, look at customer satisfaction. How are you doing in terms of reviews? What's that data telling you? And what do you need to focus on to improve? If you want to improve sort of satisfaction generally, look at your social posts, look at how people are reacting to them, understand what's working and what's not, and really break it down. But yeah, I think start with objectives in mind rather than the outcome of brand love. I think brand love is a happy coincidence rather than an objective to start with.
And is there a difference that you would suggest between a B2B and B2C approach?
No, I wouldn't actually. I get asked that question a lot. Consumers are all very different, but they're also very similar at the same time. I think really it comes down to measuring the stuff that matters, and that will be different for B2B and B2C. That would be different from brand to brand. So rather than trying to take an out of the box solution or approach, it's about sitting down and understanding what those things are for your organization, not just B2B versus B2C.
Great, thanks for that question. What tips do you have for small businesses measuring or demonstrating their return on investment on brand marketing?
Oh, that's a really good question. It comes back to what I was saying about outputs, outtakes, and outcomes. A lot of organizations and a lot of people we might outsource things to will come back to you at the end of a month and say, we've hit our KPIs, we've sent out this many press releases, we've done this many emails, we've spent this much on your ads. And you've got a bit of a so what factor. And that so what factor links to outtakes. What do people now think and feel about my brand? And outcomes. What's the business impact, right? So I think thinking in an integrated way, an outcome focused way helps. But you can measure the stuff that matters, and it doesn't need to cost the earth. Some of these platforms like Talkwalker are really reasonable to get access to the data and the metrics that matter. So to be able to demonstrate more than just the stuff that's counting stuff, start using a tool like Talkwalker and measure sentiment towards your brand. Look at changes in demographics, for instance, if you're trying to move the needle on that. So I think not being scared of platforms and some of the big costs you might hear about is a good bit of advice, hopefully.
And what sort of time duration would you recommend when running those successful campaigns?
Oh my goodness, that is how long's a piece of string? That's a very interesting question. It really depends, which I know is an annoying answer. And if anyone said that to me, I think that was a cop-out. It depends. We always say that you can't get much data from less than 3 months. If I want a very, very, very quick snapshot on not necessarily a campaign, but just a theme, a topic, or an organization, I would maybe look at Talkwalker data over a 30-day period. As standard, I would look at 6 months, and if I'm looking for a more detailed approach, I'd look at sort of 12, 13 months.
Perfect. And how big does an organization How big does a company organization need to be to start measuring using brand love?
Again, it probably comes back to what I was saying earlier. If you have customers or you want more customers, then you're probably big enough. If you have online data or your competitors have online data, be that reviews, social, earned media, owned media, whatever, that you can integrate to get an idea of your audience, your marketing, your comms activity, then you're in a good place. So really, any organization should be able to do that.
Perfect. And what is your most loved brand? What's your personal favorite?
I like that. I like that. I'm going to be controversial for a couple of reasons. It's not on the list, but I just like it, and I think it tackles some of those, those three criteria for the methodology. My favorite brand is Spurs, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, because I think they've gone beyond being a football club. They have become a corporate entity. They've become a brand. They are fantastic at building. I used the phrase earlier, I think, meaningful moments or memorable moments, and they do that. They're experience led, and they invoke feeling rather than thought. And yeah, I think that's something that they've done really well, probably better than many other football clubs in the UK and many other brands, to be honest.
Are you a fan of their team? Is there a bit of bias?
I am a fan, yeah, which does help. But yeah, they're definitely doing some right stuff in terms of their marketing as well.
Perfect. Well, that's all the questions we've got time for today. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, that concludes our webinar from Talkwalker. If you get any questions later on, do feel free to send them across, and Jack can answer those at a later stage. So next up, we've got another session from Smart Insights, looking at being adaptable, optimizing your business strategy for growth in a challenging market. So that's at 3 o'clock, and so soon. So we really hope you can make it. So from myself and Jack, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye for now.